where a power cable has snapped, falling on a 55-year-old man who was charred to death on the spot. This took place on the outskirts of Bengaluru. The deceased and two others were standing on the road when the power cable snapped and landed on the individual who unfortunately was charred to death and lost his life. A loose cable had killed a mother and her young daughter in Bengaluru last November. The Bescom had promised to review its infrastructure and add additional safety measures. So when it comes to the urban death traps in the city of Bengaluru, the tragedy continues, ladies and gentlemen. And now what we are learning is that an individual was charred to death after a power cable snapped. This took place in Bengaluru. Remember, last November, a loose cable had killed a mother and her young daughter in the IT capital. This took place last November. The Bescom, in the wake of that tragedy, had promised to review its infrastructure and add additional safety measures. I'm joined by my colleague Harish on the broadcast. So Harish, there is no end to these urban death traps in the IT capital. Whenever there are rains, whenever there are persistent potholes, the loss of life only continues.
Absolutely. This is an unfortunate incident coming to light from very close to Nelmangla on the outskirts of Bengaluru or in Bengaluru rural district. And what we do understand is that the deceased and other 2-3 women were standing on the road when this cable snaps. If you look at the video, no evidence to suggest that there was any heavy wind or rain or anything as such. The cable snaps. Was it because of the overnight rain that had taken place in Bengaluru over the past couple of days? That is not clear. But it snaps on her and she's charred to death within minutes of it. What is more problematic is that just exactly a year ago, in fact, in November 2023, in the city of Bengaluru, in the IT corridor of Bengaluru, we had seen a young lady and her small daughter being charred to death in a similar fashion. There was a live cable wire that was on the footpath. They inadvertently stepped on it and it resulted in both of them getting killed on the spot. After which we had seen the minister holding press conferences. We had seen a committee being formed to review the safety measures by Bescom, especially around its transformers and the high tension wires. But nothing seems to have changed because within a year, in fact, less than 10 months, 11 months, we are seeing another incident of a similar nature on the outskirts of the city taking another life. This when the Bescom had promised, in fact, they held a meeting saying that they are reviewing the preparation for monsoon to see if there are any loose ends that need to be tied up, if there are additional measures required. Looks like none of it worked on the ground, especially in this area where this incident has been reported from.
Right, and I'm also joined by Brinda Adige on the broadcast. Thank you, Ms. Adige, for joining us on CNN News 18. A very tragic incident coming in from Bengaluru and a repeat of the urban death traps that are persistent in the IT capital. These kind of cases keep happening, but all we get is lip service from the authorities.
You're absolutely right. It is only lip service. We must understand that Bescom is largely privatized and the kind of regulations that are there does not hold anybody accountable. They will say that it is the assistant engineer. They might even talk about another engineer, but nobody gets pulled up for all of these mishaps. At the end of the day, this is criminal negligence. The fact that nobody has monitored, nobody has checked on all of these poles or inspected, that is why that mishap has happened. And this is a criminal negligence on the part of Bescom. We do not have a law where we can register FIRs on the officials of Bescom. They will only say that we are taking matter, we are doing a departmental inquiry. And like you mentioned, it is lip service. One doesn't know whether a departmental inquiry happened. It is important that the courts come up with an order that citizens and the office itself, Bescom itself, can register a case on the local engineer or the local supervisor, whoever is the one in charge, to maintain all of these poles and ensure that they are in fit condition. Until and unless we hold them accountable and place the complete responsibility on the person in charge, these things will continue to happen because we know they have no regard for citizens' lives.
Right, but Ms. Adige, what is the solution from the citizens' perspective? Because at the end of the day, it is a vicious cycle. These tragedies occur, the officials are transferred or they get a slap on the wrist, and then public memory becomes so short that, you know, the people of cities like Bengaluru, they forget what happened because they have to move on with their lives. So these incidents keep happening again and again and again, and no one is pulled up. That level of outrage from the ground, which can turn into a movement, that does not happen.
No, in mother of democracies, why is it that citizens are taxed of going on to the streets and protesting and taking all these things up to court? Then what are these officers doing? Let them all put in their papers and go away. Citizens can manage everything, but they won't do that. So we want to hold them responsible. It is time that the officer in charge registers an FIR on the concerned supervisor or the concerned assistant engineer of BESCOM. They must be charged to register an FIR of murder and criminal negligence. I don't think it is fair that citizens must be the ones going onto the streets demanding action, because our taxes are being paid to them. Nobody is holding those people accountable. We cannot go, like you mentioned, a vicious circle again and again. Who goes to court? Who gets pulled up? Where is their personal manual of discipline? What is their manual of accountability? They have all of it, but there is nobody who holds them accountable because of this private-public partnership. Nobody is being held accountable. Each one will wash up their hands. So it is time for the court to step in, and
Right.
probably somebody will file a PIL.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Dige, for sharing your perspective. Harish continues to be with us on the broadcast. So, Harish, given the fact that this case has repeated itself, as you were mentioning, a similar case took place last November. What is the problem here? Is it a lack of maintenance of these power cables by the authorities, or are these illegal power cables that are put up in these nooks and crannies of Bengaluru, which eventually snap?
Well, in most of the cases that we have seen, it's issue of maintenance of BESCOM transformers and cables. Especially in the case that took place in November last year, we do know that it was lapse on the part of the BESCOM, and they said there was a malfunctioning unit that had triggered that. In this case, from what the visuals we are seeing, it seems to be a high-tension wire of BESCOM. It's not an illegally drawn power supply. And the BESCOM is claiming that they are trying to ensure that the transformers and wire lines that are old are replaced constantly. But the fact that it has happened within a year for the second time raises several questions. And these are residential areas that we are talking about. These are areas that see high footfall. You will have kids roaming around. You will have elderly going on the road. Possibly you will also have vehicles moving on this road as well. This could have triggered a bigger tragedy if this wasn't noticed in time. Unfortunately, one death has already taken place, but many would ask the BESCOM what is the safety measure that they put in place after an incident of similar nature in November. What is the fact that it won't repeat? What is the assurance that it won't repeat? One thing that has to be noted here is when that incident took place in November last year in Katagodi in Bengaluru, none of the higher-ups were pulled up. It was, as Brinda Dige mentioned, it was officers of AEE level who were pulled up. The BESCOM MD wasn't punished for it. Neither did the Power Minister, Energy Minister, Mr. KJ George, take moral responsibility for it. So it was lower rung officials who were made responsible for it, but nobody higher up in the ranks who paid for the kind of disaster that took place then. And perhaps that's one of the main reasons why you're seeing something of similar nature happening again in the city, especially when the BESCOM claims it's alert right now and it's taken preventive measures, especially during monsoon season.
Absolutely. Action never moves up the chain of command. Thank you, Harish, for getting us this big piece of breaking news. And you're absolutely right that what if there could have been a bigger tragedy at play? What if the entire street was waterlogged when this power cable snapped? Imagine the loss of life that would have taken place if that happened.